Well, hello everyone. I'm Jill Bloom, publisher of Walls and Ceilings, roofing contractor and building enclosure. John Wyatt, the editor of Walls and Ceilings, and I are honored to visit today with Trent Cotney, CEO of Cotney Construction Law. And Trent, as everybody knows, has become the legal voice of the roofing industry, especially since he has offices all over the country, but he truly stands for all contractors, no matter what trade you're in. And also, no matter where you may reside, Trent has an army of attorneys that has the ability to solve just about any issue you may have. And so, Trent, I see you just received an incredible service award from Western States. I saw posted on Facebook. Congratulations, but can you tell us about that before we get started?
Yeah, I really enjoy working with Western States, and we're actually having our board and committee meetings this week. We would have been out in California, but for COVID. And it's really fantastic serving with Western States because they're so technical focused. I learned a tremendous amount just being able to sit with them. So I told him, I said, I really appreciate this award. And for me, it's kind of gotten to a point in my career where what inspires me is sort of being able to give back to the associations and give back to the industry. And I told him, I was like, I'm glad you guys use me. It feels good to be wanted. And, I really, really value my relationship with them. They're great people. I've met so many good lifelong friends there, and just a great organization. I encourage any roofing contractors listening to this, if they're out in the Western States region, sign up, man. It's a great time, great people, very welcoming.
Well, I totally agree, and we appreciate all you do for the association. Well, let's just talk about what's going on in the country, Trent. So residents across the Gulf Coast and all contractors, not just roofing, but walls and ceilings, are watching closely as Hurricane Laura is about to make landfall somewhere between Texas and Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So what are you hearing? And also, how are things in Tampa?
So yeah, the latest that we've heard on the storm is that it's going to continue to strengthen. It strengthened significantly overnight from a 1 to a 3. It's probably going to go up to a 4 before it hits landfall, and then may hit somewhere between 3 and 4 when it hits. The issue with that area is more the storm surge. That's always the biggest issue when it comes to that area. Most of the roofs are built to withstand a lot of the wind speed. Obviously there's windborne debris and things like that, but the storm surge is going to cause significant flooding. So what we've heard from a lot of contractors is, hey Trent, we're heading out there, we're mobilizing, we're getting ready. And not just from, the roofing industry, any restoration contractor, anybody that's involved in, mold remediation, water remediation, drywall replacement, all those types of things, because there's going to be a significant amount of work there. It's going to happen. And a lot of the things that we're hearing from contractors is, hey, we need to get our, blue roof contracts together. That's tarps, basically short-term type mitigation work contracts. How do we navigate COVID during this stuff? And what's interesting is that, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but some of the guidelines have just changed as recently as a day or so ago. So, the big thing is that I think for the individuals there, if they haven't moved out, they need to, that window is closing quickly. And it is the storm surge. It's not necessarily the wind that I'm concerned about. It's that flood waters that are going to make everything very difficult.
So Trent, for those of us up in the Midwest that really aren't too familiar with tropical storms, give us a scale of what this means. You said right now it's projected between 1 and 3 and then possibly 4. So what does that mean? Is 4 like we're closing in on Katrina levels, or is it much? Okay.
So let me put it this way. I have been I'm 5th generation Floridian resident. We think of hurricanes very similar to how we think of alligators, where we're not overly scared of them. But I can tell you that once it gets up to a 4 or 5, that's when I start paying attention. That's when I really start getting concerned. Even 3, I start getting concerned. 1 and 2, that's usually, okay, if I'm not on the shore, I can hunker down. That's me personally. Okay, but I can tell you what it means is that the strength of the winds combined with the storm surge that follows that kind of storm is significant. It's not something that you can hunker down and just bear through it. A lot of people don't realize it could be, 10 feet to 20 feet storm surge. We saw a lot of what happened in Panama City not too long ago. And then obviously Katrina, a decade or so ago. So that's the biggest issue is you get all that. And then here's something that I think I want the listeners to pay attention to this, because this is something that I saw firsthand. And that is we had a hurricane hit South Florida region down in Naples, hit it real bad. I don't remember what the name of it was. Maybe you guys do, but it came through and everything that I just said happened. Okay, you had storm surge, you had wind, you had everything else. What a lot of people don't realize is, in addition to power being out, a lot of the cell towers went down. Okay, so you have no capability to communicate at all. And that's important for contractors listening, because you can't necessarily rely on your normal cell phone communication. You've got to be able to have a backup plan, whether it's some kind of radio system or the old, Nextel walkie-talkie type things or whatever they are. But that made it very, very difficult to mobilize and get work done. We've got a lot of good friends down in that area, and that was something that was surprising. So when you get into that 4 or 5 range, you really have to be concerned about basic infrastructure being destroyed, including cell towers.
It sounds serious, so definitely stay safe. I guess the only people right now that are going to enjoy it are the surfers, huh?
Right. Fortunately, here in Tampa, we're okay. It doesn't look like Florida's going to get much of anything off of it. It looks like it's going to hit primarily the Louisiana and the Texas area near Houston and Baton Rouge, that area. So
obviously, keep us up to date on that. Hey, I think, Trent, at some point you and the roofing contractor staff discussed about stress supply lines. So how will this event impact that?
Yeah, and we have heard repeated reports all over the United States now, everywhere from the Northeast to Pacific Northwest, anywhere in between, of potential supply chain issues. There were always issues that we saw with some fasteners and items that were sourced from China as a result of COVID-19. But what we are starting to see now is sort of a cascade effect, where a lot of the manufacturers have scaled back on their production. They started doing that in April and May. And then what's happening is that the reserve supply that a lot of the suppliers have is now gone. Okay, it's dwindling. And then when you get these big storms, what that does is it forces a lot of the materials that you would be using elsewhere to be centralized in that location. So a great example is during this storm, you're going to have a significant need for everything from tarps to plywood to shingles to, nails, fasteners, that type of thing. Clearly the supply houses around that area are going to source it, but you'll have a lot of out-of-state contractors coming in, bringing their materials in, and it just puts an overall stress on the system. And now here's one thing I want to really hit home. This is just the beginning. This storm is just the beginning. We're still in August right now. We haven't even gotten to September. That's when the real stuff happens. So I would anticipate we're going to have 1, 2, maybe even 3 more major storms. And by the time that is done, my message to anybody listening to this is, to the extent that you can stockpile some critical materials or negotiate some kind of relationship with your supplier to have some in stock if you need it, I would do it now, because I think that you're going to continue to see a stress on supply chain.
All right, let's move things up to the Heartland here, because they have their own problems, don't they, Trent? It
Right.
Sounds like, well, have you gotten any updates from the contractors in Iowa or Western Illinois, still?
Yeah, they've been working diligently. It's a significant amount. For those listeners, there was a really bad storm up there, 100-mile-per-hour wind. And, for us, that's a Tuesday. For them, that's, the structures aren't built to withstand that kind of stuff. Here we've got Florida Building Code, we've got, hurricane, everything is rated as high as it can to withstand that kind of stuff, but significant damage. It's like a bomb went off. So a lot of the contractors that are out there are experiencing the same kind of issues that I talked about before with supply chain problems. But those contractors that are capable of improvising, adapting, and overcoming are the ones that are succeeding. So the phone calls, again, I base everything off the phone calls we get. I can tell you that the contractors that are using technology properly, that have the capability to work outside of the office and still use their technology, still be able to access the internet, whether it's through hotspots or whatever it might be. Those are the ones that are most efficient, and those are the ones that are able to capitalize on the repair work that needs to be done. One thing that I always want to warn, anybody that's listening to this, if they're from a consumer standpoint, is make sure you're vetting your contractors. For contractors that are going to go sell this, the best way to sell stuff is credentials. Show your licensure if you're in a state that requires it. Show your insurance, show your capabilities. And, we're always very careful and cautious as an industry to watch out for those individuals that may not have the credentials or the capability to do the work.
Man, yeah, this is kind of the double decker, and from north to south, as above, so below. Hey, man, with these events occurring so close to one another, how's that going to impact on insurance carriers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, insurance carriers are already taking a beating from COVID-19 stuff. There's been a significant amount of challenges, from everything from business interruption insurance to potential workers' comp claims to a variety of other things. So even if they're not paying out claims, they're paying lawyers to defend those claims, and nobody likes lawyers, right? So that's the issue, is it's putting a significant burden on insurance. Now, when you compound that with significant property destruction, it's really bad. So what I would anticipate is that you're going to have a lot of premium increases, not just from the homeowner side and their property insurance, but I think next go around, you're going to see CGL increase. Most of the premiums for commercial general liability, I would anticipate, are going to go up as a result of some of this that we're seeing now. The cost to do work is increasing. It's just there's inherent inflation that we are now seeing within construction as a result of productivity loss and escalating prices of materials. So I would anticipate that there has to be an adjustment. And this is the one thing, if you're listening to this and you're trying to parse through what is the bullet point, the bullet point is you really need to take time to look at your pricing, look at your scheduling, look at your production, and make sure you are accounting for this new world order. If you are operating like it was January 2020, it's going to catch up to you. And what I don't want to do is I don't want it to be too late, because, I was speaking to a group earlier this week, and I was giving them sort of the legal highlights, right? Similar to what we do here. And I ended it with, because I heard a lot of optimism still, and I didn't want to rain on their parade, but I told them, I said, look, it's coming. It's coming. You need to be prepared. It's going to hit, whether it's fourth quarter, first quarter, whatever it is, you need to be prepared.
Well, what are you telling contractors? What do they need to do to prepare for, I guess, any snags? And let me back up here. Do you know what the timeline is for payouts from those insurance carriers?
Yeah. So as far as preparation, so there's really 5 things that I tell contractors that they need to do. Okay. One is shore up your contracts. Okay. You need to make sure that you have COVID-19 specific provisions in there. So not just an acts of God provision, but also focus on the identification provision so that it prevents a contractor or a customer coming after you for COVID-19 related loss. Okay. Second thing I want to talk to them about is shore up your AR. Okay. Accounts receivable, you can't let it go out like it was January. Okay. That cash is king. You need to move on it as quickly as possible. Third thing is shore up your safety manual. One of the things that we've started to see more, especially in state plans, is a renewed focus by the OSHA equivalent to focus on COVID-19 safety. So that's a critical thing. Fourth thing, your employee manuals. You've got to shore up your HR policies, your work from home policies, your shared technology. Okay, we've had a lot of cyber theft. We've had a lot of problems with people working remotely. Making sure that you have the policies to enforce what you need to is absolutely critical. And the fifth thing is you need to maintain constant communication with your key vendors. That includes insurance. Everything from accounting. You need an accountant basically on call now with the Paycheck Protection Program and all the different tax issues and everything else that's going on. But specifically with insurance, we've noticed an increase in time for payouts. And I think one of the big reasons is everyone understands that the court systems are clogged. that it's very hard to get something done. Okay. I've got a case in Kansas right now, and we were set before COVID, we were set for trial in September of this year. Okay, after COVID, we still don't have a trial date, but from what we've heard from the judicial assistant, we're looking at, maybe December of 2021. So that gives you an idea of how slow justice is. Everybody thinks that you can just file suit and get paid. Doesn't really happen that way. And insurance companies are using that to their advantage. They are slowing up payments. They are non-responsive. They are not doing the kind of things that even before they weren't that great. But especially now, you're starting to see a slowdown in a lot of that.
So I guess I think you said number 2 was AR, your accounts receivable. Hey, is what's going on with the U.S. Postal system right now? Is that going to further snag things up on the AR level?
Yeah, I think so. It's gotten to the point. That's a great point. We normally certified mail return receipt requested is one of the good standbys for any lien law, right? Almost every state has some kind of form of liens that you can go after and use that to, secure your construction debt. We've stopped using certified mail return receipt and have switched to UPS and FedEx. And the reason we did that is because we kept noticing lag time. And look, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night. Liens is definitely one of them. It's a very bright line. You got to get that stuff in. You can't screw around with it. So, my suggestion to people that are trying to collect AR is mail is rarely effective. It's usually picking up the phone, cornering somebody, being able to take payment on the phone, switch to that credit card payment. I know you eat 2-3%, but I'd rather have it than not have it. And then use email drips and things of that nature to be able to communicate.
Sure, the old adage, the check's in the mail, right? I mean,
Right.
Now there's even more doubt thrown into the mix. So what else are you hearing from contractors this week? I mean, you're just giving us all kinds of fun today, Trent.
Yeah, so what was really interesting and something I think, the listeners should pay attention to is there is a reason. So we write for Roofing Contractor Magazine a lot, and there is a reason that we have not written here are the current CDC OSHA guidelines, because they constantly change. Just recently, and this, I think it's a great point of discussion. The CDC came out and said that if you are asymptomatic, then you shouldn't get tested. Okay, and I'm paraphrasing there, but that's kind of crazy to me. And they didn't really say what the real justification was for that. But if I had to surmise, I would say, look, we have demonstrated a sort of inability to countrywide test, and there's also a limit on our testing capability. So I think in a lot of ways they're saying, look, if you had close contact with somebody, but you don't have symptoms, you don't necessarily have to get a test taken. Okay, that was the latest guidance that came out, which was surprising. It surprised a lot of people. The second thing that was very interesting was they talked about quarantine. Okay, before they were always saying, if you travel anywhere, 14-day quarantine, this is for your safety, this, that, and the other, and they had some great guidelines on there. Now they've kind of scaled that back a little bit, I think, as of Friday, and they said, look, follow your state, your territorial travel, your local recommendations, whatever those might be. Okay, but if there aren't any, then regardless of whether it's international or interstate travel, they're not necessarily sticking to that hard and fast rule. So this is very interesting, and this is one of the things. A lot of times I get questions from contractors saying, what are we doing? Why are we having these issues and so-and-so country is not? And I think the reason is the way that we're set up. Okay. And, from a federalism standpoint, we've got the federal government and we've got all these state governments, right? And it's very difficult to have a consensus approach to how you respond to COVID-19 when you've got 50 independent fiefdoms, right? And obviously there's a lot of politics involved, depending on which side you are. There's a lot of fingers to point. But the reality is it wouldn't matter where we were or what we were doing. You've got all these different states doing different things, none of which is consistent and none of which is going to necessarily result in us being able to show the same kind of results that Canada or maybe some other countries have had in response to COVID-19.
So you could possibly see the Gulf states, if things go south, no pun intended, putting some type of travel restrictions state to state?
I think some of the states already have it in there as far as whether or not you have to quarantine. New York, for example, is a great example of that. But a lot of the southern states don't necessarily have that in place, that require quarantine if you've gone to a certain place. So what the CDC has said, if, before it was, if you've traveled somewhere, you want to consider quarantine for 14 days, right? For your safety and the safety of others. Sure. Now what they have said is, it depends on what state you go to and what state you come back to. If your state doesn't have requirements, again, they're saying, look, if you have symptoms, you need to take it seriously, but otherwise, it is what it is. And that combined with sort of the testing guidance that came out is a little bit surprising. You would anticipate a harder stance, but I think some of it is because we've realized that because of the way we're set up, because of our testing limitations, there's only so much you can do. So this guidance is changing about every other week. Every other week, this thing changes. As soon as I'm off this call, I'm sending updates out to a variety of association executive directors to say, hey, you remember that guidance I gave you? Well, it's changed again. Here it is again. And that's the kind of thing where, you constantly have to watch it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's plenty of bad news that could potentially be traveling throughout the country right now. So let's try and end this week's video conference call on a good note, right? So I think it's the NRCA's Roofing Week. Is that correct, Jill?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So Trent, are you doing anything to celebrate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we've got Employee Appreciation Day today as part of Roofing Week. We've got, this is our headquarters here. We've got right outside this training room door, we have a table set up with free breakfast, all kinds of signs for Roofing Week, and we'll post some stuff later. But the idea is to show the appreciation to our employees that work heavily in the industry, and I think what you'll see is a lot of other contractors doing the same thing. It's a great opportunity for the industry to sort of highlight what it's doing and put a magnifying glass on all the great stuff that's out there.
Well, we congratulate you for that. That sounds like a fun day. I know Jill and I want you to stay safe. Certainly, we want you to keep us updated, especially down the Gulf states. Jill and I will keep an eye on what's going on in Illinois and Iowa. But Jill, do you want to sign us off, or do you have anything else you want to ask Trent?
Trent, you're making me hungry talking about Employee Appreciation Day and breakfast out the door.
We saved some for you.
Okay, if I was close by, I'd be like, I'm coming over. I'll bring my own coffee cup just, to be COVID safe. Anyway, but Trent, as always, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate all the insight and tidbits. It's just great for all the contractors out there and anybody else who might be watching to kind of get some good insight. So everybody who's watching, please stay safe and healthy. If you have any questions, go to wconline.com or roofingcontractor.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our free e-newsletters and our free digital editions that we put out consistently. So you can always stay up to date with when we're going to do our next interview with Trent, which is weekly. But that way you know exactly when it's posted. So everyone stay safe and healthy. And again, Trent, thank you very much. Everyone have a good day.